Good evening, everybody. KT here with Wise Images Photography, and today we are going to go ahead and go over what are film profiles in Dehancer. And what we're also going to go ahead and do is I'm going to look at ways to be able to explain it so that maybe it makes a little bit more sense. This is actually to build these things, it's a very complex, solution, right? Not a solution, but it's a very complex situation to build all of these profiles. All the scientific stuff that goes into it is absolutely amazing. However, I'm going to go ahead and try to simplify this very vast, complex film profile system that Dehancer has created. I'm going to go ahead and show you guys some examples of negative versus positive when it comes to the film profiles, and then I'm going to go ahead and go over what is this whole push-pull thing that Dehancer has as well. So I'm not sponsored, so without further ado, let's get going. What are film profiles anyways? Basically, you guys, it is your film stocks. It is. You're wonderful. I should have opened this canister beforehand, but I did not do that. Basically, it is just your rolls of films, and it depends on, oh, here, this is the other one I was looking for. It is basically your different rolls of film. So this is how I would look at it, okay? Think of it this way. You know how, let me put this down. You know how in the digital world, we have our Nikon cameras, we have our Sony cameras, we have our Canon cameras, we have our Fuji cameras. So when you think about all these different brands, okay, you look at Nikon and you're like, okay, Nikon, is known for its sharpness, its clarity. When it comes to Canon, you think of the beautiful colors that it creates. When you think about Fuji, you think about the cool color renditions that it makes. You think about that, what's the word? The film simulation look that it has. You think about those cool old vintage retro camera looking inspired designs. When you think about Sony, you think about the fantastic autofocus capabilities that it has. You think about how it has high pixelation, a high amount of pixels, right? You think about how it's a fantastic video camera. And so that's what you think of when you think of the different brands. Then you have your DSLRs, and then you have your mirrorless, and each one of those gives you a different look and a different feel. Not a different field, a different fill. Yes. All right, making sure I got that right. Anyways, that is basically what these film profiles do for us. It is basically the different film stocks. So when you think about Kodak, you think about the fine grain that it produces, the natural color, the sharpness of it. And then you get more specific. You have like Portra and Chrome and X-Star, and I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. And each one of those even goes into a finer detail of what it actually produces. When you think of Fuji film, you think about the soft colors, that soft look to it, the pastel-like colors that it has. But then at the opposite end, it also does a very vibrant look. It's very versatile in the different levels of, why am I going blank? Light. We are photographers. We should know all about light, right? So it reacts well in a lot of different situations, in a lot of different lighting situations. Then you have CineStill. So CineStill was actually, this is my understanding. If I am wrong, please correct me, as I am just now learning more about film since diving into this Dehancer program. But my understanding with CineStill is that used to be more of a video camera deal, right? And it was adapted to photography. So that's where you kind of got like that halation look. It's also suitable for low light situations. It's also suitable in tungsten situations. And so that's what you think of when you're using Cinestill. Now, Konica is another brand, and this is from Japan. And this one is known for its color rendition, it's known for its fine grain, and it's also known to work in a variety of lighting situations as well. I hope this helped you with kind of understanding, you know, by me using what our brands do versus what film stock did, right? I'm hoping that giving you guys those two different scenarios, because I feel like not many of us are very familiar with what film is, but we are very familiar with what digital did. And so I'm hoping kind of doing that comparison was able to help you to really get kind of that distinguishing factor. And like, for instance, I didn't mention this, I did mention it, but I wanted to give you a synopsis to bring it back to the digital, right? So when I talked about Kodak and I talked about how it had these different types of, you know, it had like Portra and Chroma, and then it had like X-Star, right? Think of that with the variations of what that film stock would do, right? Basically, think of it this way. It'd be like with a Nikon, D70, no, D9, let's do D90, because I used to have a D90, right? And that's a very old camera. And it would produce high grain, right? Then I got my D750. That's a lot better. It doesn't have as much grain, right? And then I got a mirrorless camera. And then that one performs differently. My little Z30, it performs differently than my D750 did, just as it performs differently from my D90. Apologies, you guys, I can't seem to think today. But anyways, so those little variations, that's kind of how those different film stocks are different. So basically, film profiles are emulating the different film stocks. Now, let's go ahead and dive into this a little bit further. All right, so now let's go ahead and talk about negatives for a little bit. So after you have taken pictures with your camera, so if you have, you would have your roll of film, and you would go ahead and you would stick one side into the camera, and then you'd stick the other side here, and then you would go ahead and close the door, and then that's how your film would get into the camera. All right, so needless to say, you start taking pictures and whatnot. So if you had a more of a negative film profile, when you process the negatives, and I'm going to show you something that looks similar to it from the Dehancer.com website. Think of it like that little film strip there, but whenever you see everybody, they would, I wasn't able to get a negative strip for you guys, but basically whenever you look at people, and please do a search, I just couldn't find a non-copyrighted image for you all that really portrayed what I wanted to show you all, but Dehancer was nice enough to say, hey, you can use any images on our you know, on our site for your videos. All right, so they're not sponsoring me, but you know, I do get a little bit of a kickback if you guys decide to buy the product. All right, so but anyways, I digress. Now, so anyways, with a negative, okay, it's the ones, if you remember, if you're around back in that time, right? Or if you're just into film photography and you just know, it's like with everybody's eyes and their teeth, it just looks like they have like no eyes or teeth, and then everything is kind of brown on the strip. And that's what a negative one looks like, okay? Now, so that's what it looks like when it gets processed. Now, with the positive, the cool thing is it was funny because I was with my friend, right? And he takes this thing and he goes, whoop, and I go, and I'm like, dude, you just exposed your film. And he's like, yeah, I know, but I wanted you to be able to show and tell with everybody. So my friend was kind enough to let me go ahead and do this and expose it. So anyways, I'm gonna go ahead and go up nice, close, and personal. And this is what it looks like before any images are even put onto it, okay? Now, after it's been processed, if it's a positive, and this is what I thought was really cool because I'd never seen this, I'd never seen positive negatives before, so it was like really cool, okay? But they have like more of a color in them. Let me see if maybe with this light, there you guys go. So I'm gonna kind of use that light, but you can see that they have more of a color. And so what happens with these particular negatives, when it's a positive negative, what they do is they're used more for putting them into a slide, so that way once they're in the slide they go into a projector and then they are projected onto the wall. And the other times that you would use a positive negative, a positive guys, I'm learning here, okay? So you're learning from someone who just learned themselves and trying to make this as clear as possible. But basically, once this is processed, it's used to put into a projector. And the other time that you would use like a positive film stock would be if you were going to go to a publication. So apparently the positive was a lot more expensive. Now, the other thing I wanted to note about the little slides here is you can have slides that are plastic, or you can have slides that have glass in them. So if it's a glass slide, it would be very, very heavy. The other thing that my friend told me about these particular positive slides is that he said if you did not do it correctly, like if you did not flatten that negative all the way down, then basically when you go to project it, it would actually be out of focus when you would go to project it. The other thing he said you had to be very careful about was making sure that no hair got onto it, because if hair got onto it, then boom, there you go. You got a hairline in your image as well. He mounted a lot of these on his own. He did give me an example of one that if you got like professionally mounted, this is what it would look like. So it actually has like color transparency written on it, and then it said that it was made in the USA over here. So that was the difference between his mounts versus their mounts. So let me see if I can show you guys that beautiful flower. Isn't that pretty? I think that's so cool, and it's so pretty. All right, putting my light over there. All right, you guys. So I hope that kind of helps you knowing what it physically looks like. Now, let's go ahead and jump into the Dehancer program and let's take a look at some different options here. What I have done is I've gone ahead and I pulled up different ones for you all. So for example, here is the CineStill 800. It takes a second for everything to kind of pop in. You can look at the various colors. Remember, CineStill was kind of emulating what a film video was doing. Then you have that Fuji color. That's going to pop in here in a second. And there it goes. Very similar to CineStill, but CineStill I felt was a little bit more rich than the Fuji C200. Next you have the Kodak Portra 160. There it goes. And it has changed to more of a little bit of a green color. It doesn't look near as contrasty as the other ones. It looks a little bit more brownish to me instead of that warm color. Then you have Konica Impressa. And that one you can see that it's really, really warm, very, very contrasty. So those four that I just showed you guys, those are all negative profiles, right? Now what I'm gonna go ahead and do is I'm gonna go ahead and show you a positive one. And this is the Kodak Extra Chrome, my apologies. This one has a very warm look to it. So just like we were talking about our different camera types, every single one of those profiles, film profiles in the Dehancer program has a different look and a different feel to it. Next up, let's go ahead and talk about this push-pull/EV. What is this? Basically, this is going to show you at different levels, you know, think of a number line, okay? Some of it's going to be a little underexposed, some of it's going to be overexposed. And that's what this push-pull does. It shows you what your picture is going to look like at different exposures. That's all it is. So I'm going to go ahead and click over to the left. We're going to underexpose it on the Kodak Ektachrome, and my apologies if I'm not saying Ektachrome, is that how you say it? That is what it's going to look like. It's going to get a lot darker. We're going to go ahead and go to the far right so that you can see what it's going to look like when it's way overexposed. All right, so that allows you to adjust basically the exposure of the camera. With a positive profile, when you are moving back and forth, basically you know that they would go to a slide option, or they would go to a print in like a publication, because that method was a lot more expensive back in the day. So what this EV does, this exposure, this push and pull does, is it basically helps with balancing out the tonal range. It also helps with the clipping on whether or not you're going to clip your shadows or whether you're going to go ahead and clip your highlights. Now let's go ahead and just jump over here to Fuji color. Now this is in the positive profile type. So let's look at it. It's kind of in the middle right now. I'm going to go ahead and click over to the left, and we're going to see what it looks like when it goes down to a little bit of a when we go to the left side of the histogram, when we're darkening everything down and underexposing it. And then now we're going to go to the far right hand side where we're going to kind of overexpose it just to see how it reacts. And that moves everything over to the right side. And you guys can see here down on the bottom, you can see, definitely you can see the histogram kind of moving back and forth. So with the negative profiles, basically it helps with the exposure, and it helps with how is that color going to come in and how is that contrast going to go ahead and come in. If you guys enjoyed this content and it was able to help you out and you learned something new, please make sure you give it a thumbs up. Let me know if you have any questions down below in the comments section. So basically that is it, you all. The different film profiles are nothing more than film stocks, and basically you pick which one you like based off what color tonality that you want, whether you want contrast, more contrast or less contrast, or you want more sharpness or less sharpness, or whether or not you want more film grain or less film grain. That is what it's all about. It's about finding your artistic flavor that you want for your photography images. And that's the same thing that we do in the digital age as well, when we're looking at which camera that we really want to use, right? So needless to say, you guys, I want you to remember to have a fantastic rest of your week. Remember that you are awesome, and I'll see you later, alligator. Thanks for watching.